Welcome to the Winning Wellness Podcast, where we explore health, wellness, performance, and try to improve not only your quantity of life, but your quality of life. I'm your host, Mitch Schwartzman.
Hi, everyone. Today, I am honored and excited to have Maddie Haralson join us for the Winning Wellness Podcast. Coach Maddie was not only an athlete, but a coach, a fellow coach with me over at Linwood University. So was honored to kind of see her progress from being a team leader as a softball player. Then she was an intern for us in the department, made a great impression on us, continued the good impression that she made as an athlete, became an intern, and then elevated into a graduate assistant coach. And then she's going to talk to us a little bit about that. But she's got a great background. She's starting off really strong in her career, so doing some exciting things with youth athletes, which I'll let her tell us more about. But Coach Maddie, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you could kind of clear up what I was just talking about a little bit and maybe kind of tell us what's been going on since you left Linwood.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be able to be here. This is going to be awesome because I can, being able to see your podcast grow is one of my favorite things, from going from being at Linwood where we got to have our gap meetings and you being a huge mentor to me. It's awesome to be able to be back at it on a podcast, being able to share with other people too. So Maddie Haralson, right now I work at Owasso High School in Owasso, Oklahoma. That's where we landed after Linwood. So I say we, my husband and I, moved to Owasso, Oklahoma. He's also a high school strength coach here. And so kind of the journey going backwards a little bit. So I originally started with thinking that I wanted to coach college softball after playing ball, and decided to go, okay, I'm going to go finish school, going to get a GA position to coach softball. So I did that. And Linwood's education program is phenomenal. They set us up to a point where I was able to take the CSCS exam right after my undergrad. So I did that. And when I got to Quincy University, there wasn't anybody else there that had a CSCS. So I started doing the strength and conditioning side for the softball team. And then word kind of got out, and girls basketball wanted to do strength and conditioning with me. So the more time that I had on the floor, the more I was like, shoot, this is what I want to do. Maybe I don't want to coach softball. So moved back to Linwood, reached out to Coach Mitch, reached out to Michael Reese, the director at Linwood University, and said, well, guys, what do I do now? Because I want to do strength and conditioning, and that's what brought me back to Linwood. And like Coach Mitch said, went through all the different stages of Linwood, and then COVID hits in 2020. Life changes, throws you a curveball, and Hunter and I moved to Owasso, Oklahoma, and it's one of the best decisions we've ever made.
Coach Maddie, will you rotate a little bit further back? When did you first start getting involved in the weight room?
Yeah, I was a gymnast growing up, so being a gymnast, you're in the weight room very early. So I started gymnastics when I was 8 years old, and my parents, bless those people, they took me 45 minutes away to go to practice 20 hours a week. And strength and conditioning was a huge piece of gymnastics. So when we would start practice, we would have a full warm-up. It was your typical dynamic warm-up, but gymnastics version. And then we would have 45 minutes of strength. Strength stuff could be anything from body weight work to true strength, what people think of as strength-based exercises with machines and squats and all of our normal things that people think of. But with that starting at such a young age, that's what really introduced me to the weight room. And then I was lucky enough in high school that I had a strength and conditioning coach at the high school level too. So gymnastics led me into the weight room and helped me be super successful at the high school level. But the gymnastics, I give all the credit to gymnastics in regards to being able to be strong and put together in the weight room. I've been lucky enough that I haven't had very many injuries as an athlete, and I put all of that towards being in the weight room. And I talk to the kids, my athletes now, about how important that is with being able to decrease injury.
Okay, so you leave Linwood, COVID kind of shifts you away from us, and then we break down a little bit more about how you got to where you are now.
Yeah. So COVID hit 2020, right? It's March. We sit down and we're told that we lost our jobs at Lindy Woods. Bad things happen, nothing anybody could control. Okay. So then Hunter and I are trying to figure out, we're finishing our master's degree. So we finished in March working. And then we finished school in May. So we started applying to full-time positions, trying to figure out what our next steps were. I looked at some different positions that were fellowship type of jobs, but nothing that was really catching my eye. And Hunter was lucky enough that we had just got off of a call with Travis Pelletier, someone else that's also been on this podcast, and one of our huge mentors. And Coach Pelletier reached out to us and said, "Hey, any interest in the high school setting?" And Hunter was kind of like, I mean, we're interested in anything at this point. So Coach Pelletier reached out and said, "Hey, my old high school is looking for a strength and conditioning coach." They reached out to me. I don't really want it. I love the position I'm in right now, but I put your name in the hat. And so Hunter took that interview. We decided Collinsville was going to be a great place. So once we decided and made that decision that we were going to go after that job, then Hunter and I started calling every other school in the state, trying to figure out what we're going to do, what I'm going to do for a job. So it was actually kind of funny because Hunter was the one that called my boss, Jordan Johnson, at Owasso High School, because we had a whole list of all the schools that we can contact and kind of put feelers out there for positions. And Coach Johnson said that he was actually looking to hire a female assistant within the next couple of years. So we jumped on that boat, went to Owasso, looked at it, met Coach Johnson, and it was unbelievable. We are absolutely spoiled at Owasso High School with the equipment and the facilities that we have. It's wild. To me, I've never seen anything quite like it. Being from Iowa, we don't have high schools like they do in Oklahoma here. So they have, I mean, it's unbelievable, the equipment and that kind of thing that we have. So obviously I'm very excited about it. And so we moved there, and I start working at Owasso High School. Unfortunately, that first year they didn't have a position for me. So that was a tough year, really focusing on faith, trying to make sure that I could control the things that I could control in that moment and be patient and allow them to try to work out a position for me. So during that time, I was doing working as a professor at Rogers State University, teaching strength and conditioning classes, working as a personal trainer. I worked at a golf course, did all these different things while I was working full time at the high school in order to earn my stripes and be able to have a position at that school. And lucky enough, after that year, I was hired on full time, and I have been there for 4 years now at Owasso High School.
Yeah, so thank you for kind of laying that out a little bit more. I love the happy ending that we're working with right now, where your husband, you guys decide to just jump several hundred or 1,000 miles away, or however far away you are. You guys kind of go for it, and he's got an opportunity and you don't have an opportunity yet, and you go in and you make an opportunity. You just a little bit of faith, a little bit of just, hey, I've worked for free before, so I'll do it again. And you go in and you show them your stuff, and they realize that you're a good hire, which those of us who have worked with you, we know that's a no-brainer. But you go in and you just say, we'll see what happens. And it seems like things have worked out. So, and when you look at the toys in your weight room, I will definitely include some photos or maybe a little video if we have something. But yeah, you guys, whenever I see your posts, I kind of get a little green-eyed. I get a little jealous. But yeah, you guys have some great stuff down there. And coaches and athletes alike are lucky to have that. So, well, one other thing I know about you is that just like you went in, you jumped into a new state and you go and you just work, you're volunteering. And I know that they probably recognize the skills and the work ethic and things like that, but I'm guessing that you did some good relationship development with the staff members. And I know that you do the same thing with your athletes. So can you talk a little bit about your approach, your style to develop in relationships, whether they are with your peer group professionals or with the younger athletes that you're working with?
Yeah, absolutely. Relationships is something that I put a lot of pride in because I think it's everything. You don't have anything if you don't have relationships, if people don't trust you. So that was the entire first year. That's exactly what it was building relationships to the point where they had to hire me because it was the only way, right? Only means necessary is because you make those relationships and they don't want to lose that. So I think the first thing that I always think of with relationships is let them know how much you care, not about strength and conditioning. They already know that you're hired for strength and conditioning, but letting the kids know or the coaches know how much you care about them and their same goals. And I think that being able to display that piece is so important. From the sport coach side, totally understanding who they are as a coach, how they run their team, what kind of culture do they want to have. All of those things are huge questions to be able to ask. So then you can be a true support staff, right? Strength and conditioning is a support staff to the sport coach. So being able to understand how they want their program to be run is going to help me be able to figure out how can I aid in that process and make it so we can be one step better with this extra entity of strength and conditioning. As far as the athletes go, I think you have to care about them as a kid. Like I work with high school athletes. They don't want to talk about, especially my female athletes, they don't really care how much they're going to squat. Okay. Some of them think it's cool. Some of them, I hope to make more people think it's really cool to squat heavy, but ultimately they want to know that you care about them as a kid. And so being able to pay attention and ask them questions about who they are. So-and-so, let's say, brings up that they're struggling in math class and they are a little bit stressed out because they have a math test coming up on Friday. Ask them on Friday, hey, how did your math test go? Oh, I think it was okay, but I haven't got my grade back. Okay, ask them the next week, did you get your grade back? How did it go? What can we do to be able to help you a little bit better to be successful in math class? Let them know that you care about them, because as soon as people know that you care, then they'll work for you. And I think that's one of the biggest things as far as relationships goes. I think the next thing is tell them why. Why are we doing the things that we're doing? You know, why am I making you do all of these really hard things in the weight room? Why does it matter? How does it carry over to your sport? I feel like especially for female athletes, that's really, really important to let them know the why. With guys, you can be a little bit more direct and let them know the why a little bit later down the road. But being able to teach the why and having a why, if you don't have a why for the things that you're doing, that's a massive problem, right? So you have to make sure that you know exactly why you're doing the things that you're doing and allow the kids to ask questions about it, because that's going to create the buy-in.
Awesome. And then you're also, so you've got your high school. Your high school is your mainstay, but you're also working with younger athletes as well, right? What's going on there?
Yeah, so looking at our schedule, there wasn't very much time for us to be able to dive into developing that middle school age. And so this year, Coach Johnson and I had the opportunity to be able to hire on a third strength coach, Rob Scott, and he does all of the 8th grade strength and conditioning. So he's a certified teacher that teaches 8th grade strength and conditioning during the day as a class. And so we have our hands on those kids that sign up for his course all year round, Monday through Friday, all year round. We have our hands on those middle school kids. So that's something that just started this year. Another thing we just started this year was having more strength and conditioning camps with everybody from 3rd grade all the way up to our middle school, and then obviously our high school athletes. So with our 3rd through 5th graders, our main goal is to create excitement around it. You know, be able to be excited about strength and conditioning with what's to come, to be able to teach your general movement patterns, to be able to teach them to just be athletic and have fun with exercise. That's so important. Those are life skills that kids didn't need to be able to have. With middle school, we teach them a lot more of what do our standards look like? What do our standards look like? What's it going to look like when I come and I get to the varsity level and I get a chance to try out and be an Owasso Ram? We talk through middle school a lot about our 6 pillars of strength and conditioning: squat, hinge, lunge, push, pull, carry. We hit all of those things and break them down into all of our regressions and progressions to make sure that they are ready to go once they get to the high school level.
Awesome. I can only imagine the impact that it makes to get a few, 2 or 3 extra years of like proper instruction. I'm sure that's just a fantastic advantage. So that's That's incredible, the way that you guys are lining things up and connecting the dots over there. Aside from your role, you're doing a little bit of everything, but one other thing that you're doing that's kind of exciting is that there's a new organization for strength and conditioning that is focused more on the high school level athlete. So I think those of us that have been around it for a few years, like for me, for instance, my first coaching gig, like I did some personal training, my first team coaching gig was with the St. Louis Rams. So I started in the NFL, which it sounds really backwards, and it was just a total stroke of luck. But it's actually, if you can work that out, it's actually the perfect place to start, because those high-level athletes, they don't require all the little hand holding and the high level of focus that those like stray cats that are children. And so I think the coaching that you're doing with the younger athletes is crucial. But for me, I started up here and I worked my way down. Now what people are realizing is that youth group needs more care. They need higher quality coaches. And so like positions, you kind of are, you were hired and then you hired another coach. So you guys are recognizing and giving those kids what they need. But on top of that, there's now an organization that you're involved in for high school specific strength and conditioning. Can you talk to us a little bit about the organization and about your role there?
Yeah, absolutely. So our organization is National High School Strength and Conditioning Association, NHSSCA. And this is an organization that started in 2020. Coach Jordan Johnson, who's my boss, was the first state director for Oklahoma. So the way that the department works, it's pretty similar to NSCA in the fact that you have a state director for each state. The thing that's a little bit different is the fact that there aren't always high school coaches and high school strength and conditioning coaches in every state. Therefore, there aren't always a state director in every state, right? So the association has grown like crazy. I was lucky enough that through some transitions in leadership and that kind of thing, I was able to become the state director for our association for Oklahoma in 2021. And it has helped me personally immensely with being able to create more contacts. Like I said, I moved to Oklahoma in 2020, right? I didn't know a soul. I didn't know anybody. And networking and relationships is something that I pride myself a lot in. And so this association has been huge from a personal side with being able to meet other high school strength coaches in the area, college strength coaches, all of the strength coaches, private sector, everybody. But the way that our association works is the whole idea is to grow high school strength conditioning. We want to create more awareness around it. We want it, just like you're talking about with the in-depth needs that you have to be as a high school strength coach are completely different than some of the higher level coaches. I can say just from my experience working at Lindenwood first, there's always difficulties in each job, right? So working at Lindenwood, I had some studs and they picked things up like this. It was so fast that they could understand movement patterns. Now a junior high boy learning how to hip hinge, that's hard. It's hard to teach them to do things like that. And so being able to create awareness around high school strength coaches and how important that is. So then the college coach, when they get there, right, when they get to the college level, they already know how to do all of those things. That's our job, is to be able to create those movement patterns, healthy patterns now, so they can get to the college level and do things that are more advanced. But our association does a few different things throughout the year. So every state has a family day, which is a completely free event. Everybody can come to a family day, and we normally have 2 to 3 speakers on family days. We like to do hands-on stuff, learn from other people in the state, get all together one time during family day throughout the year. Then our second time is a state clinic. Our state clinic actually is coming up here on March 9th for Oklahoma, and we invite everybody. That's everybody from the private side that works with high school strength and conditioning, high school strength and conditioning coaches, college strength and conditioning coaches, again, because our goal is to create growth and awareness around high school strength and conditioning. And so being able to have an event like this will not only allow our top coaches in the state to speak, but it'll allow everybody else to network, to get to know each other, to be able to ask questions, to have relationships, and to continue growing our profession. So I'm incredibly lucky that Coach Johnson was able to help guide me into this role of leadership. This is something that now looking back at it, I would never have not wanted to do something like this or participate in the High School Strength and Conditioning Association. That's something that I would really recommend to anybody that's in the high school setting. Find a way to get involved with NHSSCA because it's going to help you personally, professionally, and it's going to help your school.
Awesome. To comment on a couple of things that you brought up there, one would be the movement ability of different athletes. So I have worked in the NFL. I've worked in the Olympic Training Center. Those top level athletes, they will do things better than you demonstrate and explain them. You're like, yeah, that's what I meant. Like
Perfect.
So sometimes they just move better, and nature has designed them to do things better than the next person. And those people are really fun to work with because you could just kind of dream it up and they execute. But I've spent not as much time as you, but I've also spent time working with some younger athletes and things like that. And it's a different ballgame. The care and the attention, the patience that is required is otherworldly. But you're also making a bigger impact on those. You're intervening earlier in their life, and you're making a bigger impact on them than the next strength coach will, or the personal trainer that they might have in 20 years or something like that. So I know for me, when I decided to start doing a podcast, the first person I emailed was my high school strength conditioning coach, and he was on board. So my first interview on the series of interviews that I've done is with Kevin Kinney. He's my high school strength coach. So you are going to be that for wave after wave of young athletes. So it's awesome to see what you're doing, and I know you, and I know the job, and I know that you're going to be impacting people in just the right way and steering people in the right direction. And so I love the combination of things that's going on right there. As long as we're talking about coaching young athletes, how are you approaching these youth training? Can you talk anything about maybe movement progressions or like long-term plans for development for those younger athletes?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the first thing to say before I say anything in regards to programming is you have to have a plan and you have to be ready to completely scrap the plan. Because majority of the time, especially my first year, none of my plan works. Okay. And you have to be able to think on your feet with, okay, here's plan A, here's plan B, here's plan C, right? So the cool thing about high school strength and conditioning is, especially at our high school, we're lucky enough, we have some absolute studs, Power 5 athletes, studs. Nice. So some of the best athletes I have ever worked with have been at Owasso High School. Now, we also have our athletes that have never done anything athletic in their whole life. And we're teaching them because they want to be part of, let's say, the golf or tennis team, okay? So you have a huge spectrum of kids that are going to walk into your weight room. So progressions, regressions, and having a plan are so important. The first thing I always start our kids with is what I call ground zero. So again, I'm a huge believer in the 6 pillars. So squat, hinge, lunge, push, pull, carry. So the first thing I have our kids do is an eccentric body weight squat. Can we move well from a body weight position? I'm really big on being able to move our body weight first before we load. So can we do that? First of all, can we do that under control? Because if you think back to the way that people move naturally, especially high school kids, they want to try to move as fast as they can. They want it to look really, really easy. It's really cool to move fast and have it look easy for you. So being able to take these kids and slowing down their tempo a little bit allows you to, one, have a chance to teach them and stop them in their tracks if we don't have the correct movement patterns. So the first thing we do is always body weight eccentrics. Then we'll load them eccentric. So we would go from, I'm just going to use a squat for an example. So we'll go body weight squat, Then we'll go eccentric bodyweight squat. And then we will go 10-pound plate up here at our chest, going down eccentric squat. Once we can do that really well, then we'll move up to a 25-pound plate. So we're essentially doing a dump, like a goblet squat. But unfortunately, when you have 55 middle schoolers in the room, we don't have 55 dumbbells. So you're using a plate, right? You got to use whatever you can with the amount of kids that we have in that weight room. So we build then into our eccentric goblet squat. Once they can do that with a 25 really well, then we start to look at our isometrics. So great, we can control it on the way down. Can we hold that bottom position? That's something that from the high school level I've noticed is really missing. A lot of times athletes can control it down, but once you make them stick in the bottom, our core starts to waver a little bit. So being able to create that tension in our body and maintaining that tension in the bottom of our main movement patterns is super important to be able to teach before we load their spine. So then we'll move on to our isometrics, teach the isometrics. And then once we're finished with that, we'll move on to a front squat. Normally with our front squat, I will teach them with a PVC pipe and do a zombie type squat first, where the PVC pipe's up on our deltoids. So your hands straight out, eccentric, knock that guy out, zombie squat. And then once we're done with that, we'll zombie squat with the barbell. And then we'll go into a front squat, and then we'll go into a back squat if that's appropriate for their team. Now, how long that takes, totally dependent on the kid. So some of my athletes have been in the weight room for 2 years, and they're still doing goblet squats because we're not quite ready yet for our front squat, and that's okay. That's something that you have to create as far as a culture, that we are all squatting and we're all getting better at our squats. But the most important thing, one of our main goals, is to decrease injury. So if a kid's not ready to be loaded with a barbell, then we need to make sure that they're at their appropriate stage of our progression. So we always start at ground zero, and then we'll build up from there. Like I said, I have some absolute studs. Some of my kids get to the point where they're at freshman year and they're loading into a back squat position and they look phenomenal. Once they look really good, typically I look at originally, so like we said before, we're really lucky with resources. We have velocity-based training. At Owasso, we have 24 ENOD Pro units, which is unbelievable for the high school level, but we're able to use that, which is helpful. Honestly, when we first got those velocity trackers, my first thought was, I don't want them to work on moving fast until we can squat, like for a female, 1.5 times our body weight. The reason I said that is because research says decreases lower body injuries, right? Well, the more that I used the velocity trackers, the more I felt like that's not what I should be doing, because being able to teach those young kids to move quickly with the strength that they do have is also really important, because they're going to go out onto the soccer field and be asked to move quickly. So what's the difference if I take their strength that's not quite as not as high of a level? They have to still be able to move whatever they can move quickly to play sports. The other thing that's super important with the velocity trackers is being able to create safety. So I can put a ceiling on our kids and say, hey, we're going to be at this percentage, but if you go less than 0.5 meters per second, you have to take weight off. So now, since I only have 2 eyeballs and I can't see everybody in the room, I can say, hey, if the iPad says this, you got to take some weight off, which is going to keep my athletes more safe, and it's going to help them stay on track with what it is that we're trying to do from an adaptation standpoint.
Awesome. Can you say the product, the brand of VBT you're using again?
Yeah, ENOD Pro.
Okay. I don't know if I'm imagining things. I think that might be the unit that Simon uses, because I just interviewed him, and maybe I'm dreaming of it, but I think that might be the one that he collaborates with for his PhD research and that he's using over in Germany. So
That's huge.
Is there a little magnetic piece that goes on the bar?
Yeah.
I think that's the same thing. So unless I'm getting a little twisted around. Anyways, so I took a lot of things from that, but that was one thing that I wanted to comment on. So that's probably not, you probably didn't think that was going to be my first comment or question regarding all the stuff you just said. Let's talk a little bit more about that goblet squat. You don't have to give us every detail, but maybe what are a few things that you're looking for that you would say you are now prepared for the bar? And then along with that, if you've got standards for your goblet squats, are there other motions that have standards?
Yeah.
What are you looking for?
Absolutely. So with our goblet squat, we're really picky in regards to what that form looks like. So the first cue I always teach young athletes is sit your hips back first. Hips go back first. Once their hips go back, that helps teach them to be able to stay in their heels a little bit more. One thing I've noticed with cues for high school kids, they have to be a little bit more exaggerated compared to what you would tell a cue to someone that's a college athlete. I think the reason that is because it just doesn't click right away. And so giving them the little bit exaggerated is going to give you the middle ground of what you're actually looking for. So I say sit all the way back, hips go back, sit in your heels. So then their hips go back and then we go down. And then one of our biggest things is we have something visual to look at. So normally having cues that they're thinking about what's happening in their body versus having external cues where I can say, hey, I want you to look right here on the bench. I want you to look at this spot right in front of you when we do our squat. It's going to help keep our chest up. So I can say, keep your chest up, or I can say, hey, look at this one spot on the wall or on the bench or something in front of you. So being able to create that more upright position in a goblet squat is super important. It helps with being able to keep that plate up too, right? So that's the first thing I tell them. Set your hips back, and then they'll control it down. I say eyes straight forward, eyes on something, give them some sort of cue to be able to look at. As far as when they're ready to progress, we build with some volume first. And so our eccentrics normally go from a 2 second to 3 second to 5 second eccentric. And I count really slow. So it's probably actually more like a 7 second eccentric because I'm going around coaching everybody, fixing form while I'm counting to 5. So it gets to be a really long eccentric. And when we build up to 4 sets of 8 of a 5 second eccentric on our goblet squat, most of the time kids are then ready to be able to do a front squat. If I'm not sure if I have the kid teetering with it back and forth, I can give them a 45-pound plate and then tell them the same thing. It's same weight, right? Same weight. Just keep our form the exact same. Sometimes I find that with female athletes, they struggle with being able to hold that 45-pound plate. So it's a harder issue for them to hold it than it is for them to be able to do the exercise, and then our form starts to fade away. So I haven't done a ton with female athletes with a 45-pound plate. Guys normally can handle it a little bit better. So when they get to that 4 sets of 8, 5 seconds going down on our goblet squat, like I said, most of the time they're ready for a front squat. And if they're not ready, then you take them back down. I think that's one of the biggest things as a coach. You have to be okay with being wrong. If you're not okay with being wrong and making mistakes, you're in the wrong profession. So being able to say, okay, here, let's go do this, try it out. Oh, they're not ready. Okay, back down to here. It's just like a staircase, right? So take them to the level that they can be at. As far as other exercises that have standards, push-ups are a huge one. We put everybody, I will ask them first, can we do a push-up? If you can do a push-up, let me see you try it on the floor. And if they try it on the floor and it looks not the way that I want it to look, then we'll adjust with our progressions. So normally our progressions with push-ups start on the barbell. So we'll put them up at an angle so their hands are up on the barbell, and then we'll slowly lower the barbell down so they get closer and closer to parallel to the floor. Once they get to the bottom of where the barbell can't go down anymore, then we'll put them up on the bench. And then once they graduate from the bench, then they can put, our racks have a little elevated part on the bottom of the racks, like the base of the rack. And so we'll put them on there. That's just a tiny bit of an incline for them. And then we'll put them on the floor. Things that I talk about as far as cues with push-ups. We talk a ton about posture. Posture is huge with being able to teach these high school kids how to control their posture. A ton of lifting comes from posture, right? So if you don't teach that at the high school level, a lot of injuries are going to happen. So being able to teach them to tuck their torso underneath of them, tuck their hips under. So a lot of kids or people in general have an anterior pelvic tilt. Teach them how to tuck their hips back under and have a neutral position. When we do our push-ups, we talk about having our body look like a bow and arrow. Again, they don't understand what their body looks or feels like. They have never done exercise before, right? So you have to relay it to other things that they're going to understand a little bit better. So here's my body. Elbows are going to come out here like the arrow part. So we don't want our elbows all the way out here. We don't have to have our elbows tucked all the way and tight like a tricep push-up. We can have it right in the middle like a bow and arrow. So being able to teach that, teaching the strong plank position at the beginning, meaning that we're going to push the ground away and actually protract our scaps instead of sinking into our shoulders. Those are all things that we look at. And so I feel like with push-ups, as you progress athletes, it's easy to see if they're at the right level of progression. If they start to lose some of those pieces of form, then we just have to take them back down, get them a little bit stronger before we move them back up again.
So you're winging it basically, right?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much every day is winging it.
You know, I don't know when I would have started agreeing with you, but I know that a younger version of myself, a newer to strength and conditioning version of myself, would have been so frustrated with the list of requirements it takes to add weight. You know, I think a young coach listening to you right now might be thinking, there's all these like hoops to jump through. None of that will get you better. You have to get stronger. Strength is what's going to boost your performance and things like that. But as their career goes on, or their perspective changes, or if they actually just listen to you, maybe they'll understand that what you're doing in the weight room is not only you're preparing them to move better when they're lifting heavier implements, but also you're teaching them how to move their body better for when they go shoot hoops, or if they're in gym class or whatever they're doing. It's like you're spending time coaching movement, and now is the time to do it, because they have less total reps in their lifetime at age 14 or whatever than they do at age 40. And so you're fixing their movement now, and they might not appreciate it, but it's the right thing to do. That's not what a lot of people will think of when they think of strength conditioning. You know, they're looking for like the highlight reel with the heavy weights and all, and the fast track times and stuff like that. But they are in the groundwork of their big boy and big girl bodies, and you're helping them move better, and you're setting them up for success down the road. Like, you might not ever reap the reward of that. So I don't know if it feels that way, or if you just trust the process, or if they trust the process. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever like so excited that I don't know if they're excited to move better, or if they can feel it at those young ages. I mean, do you get much feedback from that, or?
Yeah, it happens more than you think, which is so rewarding as a coach, because you just hope that they don't get bored, right? Because you're practicing weightlifting, right? We're trying to get better at our movement patterns. You have to do a lot of the same things over and over again to get stronger and to move a little bit better. But I had a cool thing the other day where I was able to, so like I said, this is my 4th year at Owasso High School. So I had a chance to be able to take these freshmen, and then all the way through seniors, which I've never been at a school long enough to be able to have a full 4-year development with a kid.
Yeah.
So I went back through all of my testing numbers, and I did this with girls soccer, and I put all of their testing numbers that they've ever had at Owasso High School from their freshman year all the way through their senior year, the testing that we just had before their senior year season. And the look in their face from being able to see how much progress they've made when I handed those packets out and I showed them that, hey, remember when you squatted 65 pounds on our max testing, and then now you can squat really well at 220? That growth is unbelievable, and they get really excited about it. So for coaches that are still kind of stuck in that, like, is it going to be worth it? Are they going to see it? They will. Just trust it. And the more that you believe in it, and the more excited you get when you see them be able to have some of those successes, make it a big deal, because then they're going to understand that it's a really big deal. So that's one of my favorite things about high school strength and conditioning, is being able to teach life lessons, being able to teach them that progress matters. Small wins matter, right? They lead to all of the big wins. And we talked about that with that packet with, hey, if we would have just only focused on the big one, if we only would have focused on you being able to squat 225 pounds, you wouldn't have won. because you only squat 220. That could be, you could think of it as a fail, or you could look back and say, wow, I used to only be able to squat 65 pounds and my form was a little bit shaky, right? And now I can squat 220 really, really well. So being able to teach them those life habits of being able to have that perspective, not only in regards to training, but life. Small ones matter in everything that we do. And I think that you can teach that from the high school setting.
Yeah. It's that's long-term thinking, and it's putting your priorities in the right order, in my opinion. So it's good to hear. I expected nothing less, but I'd also bring up, and I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but I understand that youth weightlifting, it's common. It's common in some of the more Olympic-based countries, like Russia, China. So I've heard that a lot of the youth weightlifting competitions over there, it's who has the nicest form. It has nothing. They don't add weight. It's not a weightlifting. It's not a load competition. It is a form competition, and because they know that weight will come later. So I don't know if you guys have ever like done a twist on that, like maybe have like a best squat in the room wins a t-shirt or something like that. But I mean, your priorities align with that. So
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
but I might take that idea.
I stole it from Coach Kenny. It's he'd have like a clean. He taught us cleans, or he would do a push-up contest, and it would be, you think like, oh, I'm gonna do 60 push-ups or whatever. He's like, no, just do one really good one. I want to see who can do the best push-up, who can do the best rep, and so that's how he would start us, and then go from there. So, not having, I've spent time coaching youth, but I've never spent enough time coaching youth to see that progression. So it's good to hear that.
Yeah. It's pretty wicked when you have a high school girl send you a video of, hey, I did a chin up on my own. That kind of stuff's pretty darn cool, right? So when they get excited about it, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, let's go. How about, you're giving us some good tips for approaching coaching, but do you have any, let's say it's maybe there's an athlete listening who doesn't have a U or like the best strength coach at their high school or middle school, or maybe we're talking to the coach of some athletes for that age group. Do you have any do's or do nots that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah. One thing that's really cool about our field, strength and conditioning coaches want to help everybody, right? So if there was an athlete that wanted help with strength and conditioning, if they reached out to a strength coach, I bet you they're going to respond and they're going to get an answer. So don't be afraid to ask. If people tell you no, they tell you no. But most of the time, people want to help other people. And so give it a shot and see if someone is willing to lend you a helping hand if you're an athlete that's looking for extra guidance. As far as young coaches in the field, do's and do nots, don't be afraid to mess up. You're going to mess it all up. You're going to mess everything up. All your plans, plan A, plan B, plan C, all the things, you're going to mess them all up. So do it. Mess it up as big as you can. So then you make mistakes and you learn from it. As far as do's, is like from the professional side for other coaches, reach out to other people. You have to be able to network. You're not going to find jobs if you don't network. So build your web is what I like to call it. Who are your people? Who are your people connected to? Build your web. There's no way that we would have moved to Oklahoma if Coach Pelletier wasn't in our web, right? So that conversation never would have happened. We didn't call him and say, hey, can you help us find a job? We were just calling him to catch up and see what's going on. And we told him, hey, we lost our job. We don't know we don't know what our next step is. And we weren't asking for anything, but it happened to lead to that because that coach was in our web. So being able to create a network is one of the most important things. for coaches in the high school setting, like I said, get involved with NHSSCA. It's going to help you grow. It's going to help you with that network side. If you are looking at doing high school strength and conditioning, something that I didn't bring up yet with our association is we just this year are passing a brand new certification. So it's called the HSSCC, High School Strength Coaches, Strength Coach Certified. And it's a little bit different. It's not like a CSCS or taking your CSCCA. It's more like taking a class. So you sign up for the certification, and it takes you through a whole bunch of different modules of assignments, of different practical application. You watch different videos, respond to the video, and it's directly related to high school strength and conditioning. So once you submit all of your assignments, then you have some of our top-notch high school coaches in the nation that grade the assignments and give you feedback. So not only are you going to get the certification at the end by putting the work in, but you're going to also have connections with some of the top-notch coaches in the entire association throughout the United States. So look into that HSSCC. If it's something that you feel like, hey, I don't know if I can do the CSCS, but I feel like I'm going to be a sport coach that is going to do a little bit of strength and conditioning here and here. It's a perfect certification for that situation. It's a perfect certification for somebody that maybe even strength and conditioning isn't your top thing, but it's part of your job. And so being able to have something to teach you a little bit more about our field would be really, really important. Is keep your main, especially for the high school level, keep your main lifts all year round. So if I choose that a team is going to back squat, they're going to back squat all year. You can freshen it up with accessories and sprinkle some different fun things, finishers and that kind of thing in there. But if you're at the high school level, when you change those main lifts all of the time, kids forget really quickly. They forget what's going on. They forget what the name of the lift is even called. Being able to keep those main lifts is going to allow them to keep progressing throughout the year. If you're wanting those KPIs to be able to be truly measured, you have to keep them consistent in your programming. So don't change things too quickly to the point that they don't even have a chance to get better at them. As far as young coaches, make it your program. Your program. Don't look on social media and then try to figure out what so-and-so somebody else is doing, or somebody that you're competing against. Oh, they're doing assisted jumps. That means I should do assisted jumps. No, do what you think is going to be the best for your kids, because everybody's situation is a little bit differently. It's that kind of building off of that on the don't side. Don't program anything that you can't demo really well. Don't program anything that you haven't ever done yourself, because especially for kids that have a low training age, they're going to have a much higher stimulus to whatever it is that you are giving to them compared to what you are as someone that's been training for a long time. So don't program anything that is something you don't know if you could physically do. All of my programs, I test them all ahead of time. I've done them all before, even like the finishers and things like that. I test them all ahead of time because I want to know what it's going to feel like, and I want to know how to respond if the kid says, hey, I'm starting to feel an ache or a pain right here. I should know what that feels like, and if that's something that's normal or something that needs to be referred out.
What a good point. You have to be able to own what you're dishing out. And I don't know who put the idea in my head, but there's basically like, if someone's doing what you told them to do and they get horribly injured, was there a really good reason why they were doing that, or is it because you saw it on the internet? Like, that is a great point, and I hope whoever's listening, they log that one. They really log that when they take that one to heart. So, yeah, if you can't defend what you're doing, probably shouldn't be doing it. Again, you are working with a unique population, these younger athletes, and your influence is probably you're not only going to be more influential in the acute setting, but in perpetuity, that they're, if someone's working with 80-year-olds, there might impact that person for the next 20 or 30 years. You're impacting people for maybe the next 100 years, maybe. So do you have any any tricks or any approaches that we have not discussed already for making great people and great athletes?
Be patient. You have to be patient with people. They're going to make mistakes, especially at the age group that I'm working with. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to forget things. Be patient and be the mentor that you wanted to have, right? So high school is a hard age for a lot of kids, and they go through a lot of stuff. They're figuring their bodies out. They're worried about their peers, all sorts of stuff. And being able to be someone that they can count on is so important, from a mentor side, from a leadership side. If the wrong things happen, say something about it. Step up and be able to be a leader. Set the environment to be conducive to a kid's success, right? That can be in regards to leadership. That can be in regards to your programming. It would be silly for me to be able to take a kid that has zero training age and then program French contrast with them, right? So find a way to create an environment that's conducive to a kid's success. If you have a team that is super high energy, allow them to be super high energy. If you have a team that is absolutely terrified, like my girls golfers, they're scared to even talk to you, find a way to be able to make it so those kids feel comfortable. Something else that I think is a huge piece, and this goes with our relationships too, is I call it the accountability and love balance. Accountability can be tough. Okay, accountability can be really tough. Nobody likes to be called out. Okay, that's what I mean by accountability. So if a kid is not doing the right thing and I call them out, for a high school kid, that is absolutely demoralizing. They're never going to forget it. They're going to be so worried about it that they got called out in front of all of their team, right? You as a coach and as a mentor have to understand when it's important to be able to hold your kids accountable and when it's important to love on them. So a kid could be making a mistake because they saw their friend do it, and you just happen to see that kid do it, and so you call them out for it. But maybe that kid has been bullied throughout the school year, and all they want is to be part of a team and to be accepted by other people. You calling them out just ruins them. So being able to understand when it's important, different times of the year and with different athletes, when it's important to hold a kid accountable and when it's important to be able to understand that kid well enough that you can just love on them. Because sometimes kids just need love, right? People need love, not just kids. People need love. And being able to find that balance of being able to say, hey, I can care about you so much. I can care about you so much and give them that. So then you can hold them accountable and they listen and they don't rebuttal and get nervous about it. They know that even if you're holding them accountable, you still love them. But being able to create that balance, I think, is so important when it comes to coaching and mentorship.
I'm calling this the Winning Wellness Podcast. It is the Winning Wellness Podcast. And that has two meanings. One is that some people need to win their wellness. They're not happy with their energy levels, the shape of their body, maybe they're ill or whatever, so they need to win back their wellness. And some people they're ready to compete, and they might be competing in a sport, for fitness, trying to achieve goals, whatever it is. Do you have any tips for us to win well?
Yeah, get rid of the negative self-talk. Constantly, we are in our own minds, and nobody talks to you more than you. So if in your head, your thoughts are rolling around with negativity all the time about who you are, about what your body looks like, about the kind of athlete that you are, the success or failures that you've had, if those thoughts are continuously on a roll of negativity, of course our actions are going to lead to negative things, or you're going to eat the extra meal at the end of the day when you weren't planning on it if you have those negative thoughts about yourself. So being able to restructure those. So one of the biggest things on negative self-talk, to be able to create that or to change that, shift it into positive self-talk, is being able to be aware of it. Slow yourself down and think through your thoughts. Was that negative? Oh, was that another negative thought that just happened? Be aware of it first, so then you can restructure it. So if you can recognize the fact that, wow, that was a really negative thought that I just had that went through my head. Let's see if I can try to stop that first of all, and then restructure it. How could I word that a little bit differently so I can continue to make healthy decisions for my mind, my body, my soul, all those things. And I think that a ton of that all comes from what's happening up here.
Yeah, awesome. I just it'll be another episode hopefully, but I just interviewed a sports psychologist named Joe Linack, and his phrase that he borrowed from someone else, he calls those ants,
Oh,
automatic negative thoughts. So, yeah, you're covering some material that we're going to see in another episode there, but that's because it's important, and it is a common issue. Awesome, that's great. How about what if people want to reach out to you and get a hold of you?
yeah, I would love that. As far as social media goes, my name is almost always just Maddie Haralson. So Maddie Haralson on Instagram, Maddie Haralson on Twitter. If you want to follow the NHSSCA Oklahoma page, it's NHSSCA_Oklahoma on Twitter. We have an Owasso Strength Instagram page as well. So any of those options, I would love to be able to talk with anybody on the phone. I'd be happy to be able to put my phone number on there too, or you can reach out to Coach Mitch for my phone number. I'm happy to be able to talk with anybody there. Email wise, I would love to be able to email back and forth threads or learn from any of you guys that are listening. So my email is maddiebohr, MADDIEBOHR @gmail.com. And I would love to be able to hear from anybody.
Excellent. Well, before we close, I want to see if there's, let's say there's some woman who's about to get married and she wants to get in great shape and make her back sculpted. You don't happen to have any materials for her to get prepared to try to look like you did at your wedding, do you?
I got a couple things. In mind.
If there's not a PDF for sale, there should be. I mean, you can think about it, but maybe we'll put a picture, a back pose on here. But ladies, if you're listening and you want to get that body right for wearing the wedding dress, you got to talk to Coach Maddie here.
That's right. It's important. It's in all the pics.
Got to get the back right.
Got to do the work in. Yep. Reach out. We'll talk about it.
It's not about the mirror muscles. Got to get the posterior chain going.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Coach, for your time. You gave us some gems here. There's lots of good info here. I knew we'd get some good stuff. I didn't know what we were going to get exactly, but it's better than what I had hoped for. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be able to be part of it and be able to continue growing our field.
Absolutely. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you so much for listening to our Winning Wellness podcast. If you have any questions or suggestions for podcast guests or topics, you can submit those through YouTube comments. You can message me on Instagram. My handle is Mitch Schwartzman, or you can email me at coachmitchschwartzman@gmail.com.